and welcome.
Well, thank you very much for your invitation, Eric. I'm happy to be the second choice. That's fine. Um, I spent almost 8 years in Sri Lanka, living as a resident there and studying Buddhism. And I go back quite a lot. And so my comments are going to mainly come from the Theravada tradition of Buddhism. That is the Buddhism that is found in Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, Sri Lanka, and of course, in the West. It's sometimes called Southern Buddhism. And I'm going to begin with two quotes. And the first comes from a very old text called the Discourse on Loving Kindness. And it goes like this: let none deceive another, not despise any person whatsoever in any place. Let him not wish any harm to another out of anger or ill will. Just as a mother would protect her only child at the risk of her own life, even so, let him or her cultivate a boundless heart towards all beings. Let thoughts of boundless love pervade the whole world, above, below, and across, without any obstruction, without any hatred, any enmity. My first quote. The second is and also from a Pali text called the Simile of the Saw. And this time, the historical Buddha is talking to his monastic male disciples called bhikkhus. So he says, bhikkhus, even if bandits were to sever you savagely, limb by limb, with a two-handled saw, the one who gave rise to a mind of hatred towards them would not be carrying out my teaching. Herein, bhikkhus, you should train yourselves. Our minds will remain unaffected, and we shall utter no evil words. We shall abide compassionate for their welfare, with a mind of loving kindness without inner hate. Now, the first of those quotes speaks about developing loving kindness to the whole world. And this means to put towards people we don't like as well as those we like, those we see as enemies. The second is an example of this. Even if we are being attacked violently by those who would kill us, we should not develop a mind of hatred. Now, this kind of ethic kind of permeates, infiltrates all that Buddhism says about a rule of life. So I'm going to turn now to the different frameworks that give discipline to Buddhists. And here there is a distinction between lay people and monastics. That's a distinction that is important in Christianity, of course, as you will witness to, and also in Buddhism. The historical Buddha called people to follow him, in other words, to renounce their home and family and to live what we would call a monastic life. But there were also lay followers who remained in their homes and supported the nascent monastic community. Now, for lay people, central to their practice are what they call the 5 precepts, the Panchasila, 5 voluntarily undertaken commitments. They're not commandments, and Buddhists are very quick to say this. No, there's no eternal creator God to command these strictures, these precepts. We undertake them voluntarily for our own spiritual development and for the good of the world. And lay people, when they go to Buddhist temples in countries such as Sri Lanka, will be led by monks in chanting these precepts. And this is called taking the precepts. The monks will chant and the lay people will then respond and say the same words in Pali. And once lay people have actually recited these precepts for at least 24 and 48 hours afterwards, they will be absolutely meticulous about not breaking any of them. And the 5 precepts are these. I take the precept to abstain from harming any living being. I take the precept to abstain from taking what is not given. In other words, not stealing, except it's a bit wider than that. And contemporary Buddhists have drawn attention to that. You don't take another's country, you don't take another's land or anything like that. Thirdly, I take the precept to abstain from misusing the senses, which is usually taken as a sexual misconduct. Fourthly, I take the precept to abstain from false speech, which is, again, wider than just lying. Then lastly, I take the precept to abstain from intoxicants or any substances that will cloud the mind. Buddhists are not completely teetotal. And I know that from experience, but they certainly will not touch alcohol or anything like that for a certain amount of time after they've taken the precepts. And on special days of observance in the temples, lay people will take a few more precepts to bring their life closer to that of a monk. They will take 8 precepts or 10 precepts. And these extra precepts include, not using perfumes or jewelry or elaborate clothing, avoiding sleeping on high beds, avoiding eating at inappropriate times, which for Buddhists would mean after 12 noon. So they take these extra as a kind of rule of discipline for perhaps only 24 hours on full moon days, things like that, to bring their lives closer to that of a monk. Now, in the last 5 minutes, what about the monks? Monks, women and men who have taken higher ordination, follow a lot of rules of discipline. In one particular rule, which is followed in Sri Lanka, it's 227 rules for monks and 311 for nuns. And there's no time to go into the whole question of women and Buddhism, because in Theravada countries, not all women can take higher ordination. But these rules, several hundred of them, are divided into different sections according to the penalty that you have to undergo if you break them. For instance, there are 4 rules that mean that you're ejected from the order if you break them. And these are, no sexual activity, maintaining celibacy, no stealing, no killing, and no lying about the religious attainment that you've reached. If you claim you're enlightened, if a monk claims he is enlightened and he certainly isn't, then that could mean he's ejected from the order. And there are certain times during the month when the rules are repeated and monks and nuns confess, or are supposed to confess the rules they have broken. And then there are other rules that entail a formal meeting, rules that entail some kind of forfeiture and confession, and then rules, the breaking of which just entail an acknowledgement. And many of these rules are simply about how a community can live well together. Bodily comportment, and not harming each other and that kind of thing. And there have been some academic books written on how the rule of discipline for the monks in Theravada Buddhism and other forms of Buddhism lead to, or should lead to, a harmonious society. So in the 20th century, there has been quite, as you may know, there has been intermonastic dialogue. Thomas Merton was the main inspiration, and he called for this before his death, and it resulted in commissions for intermonastic dialogue to be set up in America and in Europe. And very interesting things have come out from there. And I would like to draw attention to one publication that came out of intermonastic dialogue. It was published as, if you can see that, Benedict's Dharma. And the full title is Benedict's Dharma, Buddhists Reflect on the Rule of St. Benedict. And 4 Buddhists in the book discuss the rule of St. Benedict and a Buddhist response to it. And remarkable kind of resonances come out from that. And I'm going to end with a quote from this. It's from an American teacher of Buddhist meditation, Joseph Goldstein, a convert from Judaism. And he comments on the chapter on humility in the Rule of St. Benedict. St. Benedict's chapter on humility ends in a wonderful manner with a discussion of that love of God which in its fullness casts out all fear. This resonates strongly with the Buddhist understanding that the feeling of unconditional loving kindness is the antidote to fear. The Buddha first taught loving kindness meditation to a group of monastics who were being harassed by unfriendly spirits. These spirits were creating fearsome sounds and visions that terrified the monastics. As they started practicing loving kindness, not only was their own fear dispelled, but also the spirits were pacified and in fact became supporters of the monastics' endeavors. Fear keeps us from love, from both expressing it and receiving it. At the gate to an ashram in India, there is a poem about the Guru as the embodiment of the enlightenment principle. The last line says, "I'm as close to you as you are to me." This had a strong effect on me because I realized that it was only my own fear that kept me distant from the love that is always there. So I finish there, but my position as someone who, in a sense, is hybrid, I retain my roots in Christianity as a Methodist local preacher, but I'm also very much influenced by Buddhism. I feel the two traditions have a great deal to give to each other, particularly on, how life should be lived, on our rule of life, whether it's following the 5 precepts, the 10 commandments, or if those who are monastics discussing monastic rules of discipline.